Perfect. Okay, good morning, everyone. I'm Rhonda Burkhart with HCC. I've noticed over the years that people have different levels of Excel expertise, and I wanted to, uh, kind of raise everybody kind of hopefully up to at least a similar level. Using Excel is wonderful for, uh, giving you more time in your day, using it for the analysis instead of uh, doing things by hand. It can help you really give you back time in your day. And I'm always looking for those types of options which help you do that. So I'm going to go ahead. We're going to start with a vendor merge first. That should only take a few minutes. I'm going to go ahead and share my screen. Great. Okay. So, all right. You should be seeing the screen over here with the vendor merge, and it came out with that, I think maybe springish with SSDT coming out with that option, and then they had unmerge and they kind of backed it off and then they brought it out again. So this is a great time to go over this since we are close to the end of the fiscal year, and you may have some vendors that do need merging. I've done this with a couple of districts, and we'll just want to make everyone aware of the option that they have that they can do this. So for the vendor merge, you're going to have the same tax ID type, tax ID number, and the type 1099, and you can actually put that on your screen. So we'll move this guy over here. So if we go in the core vendors, so what I've done here is I've added some columns under the more. So I've added the type 1099, the tax ID type, and the ID number to see those, add those so you can see what those could possibly be. It's the demo system. I've only done it with a few, so I'm just sorting these so you could see that we're going to use this Lacey Ann Beard as an example of this. You can see she's got the same type 1099, the non-employee, and the NEC and the social, and same social security number there. So with that would be one that we would need to merge. So if you look on the individual vendor screen, you're going to see that you have this merge vendor button, and you'll be able to see those are the ones that are eligible for merging vendors. Okay, so we'll look in this one here, and so we can see we've got this merge vendors. So also good to note is that it's effective for the calendar year. So our odd little demo system, it's in like, I think it's August of, what is it? It's in August of 2021. So we're just gonna have to kind of take note of that and just remember that in its mind, it's way back there. So when it's doing the calendar year, it's going to think that it's doing it for the 2021 calendar year. But for us, it would be 2024. So you would go through and review your vendors, which would need merging. And good thing is it will correct any, for the merged into vendor, it will correct any change in that, and even in the transactions in process. So you don't have to wait until everything is paid out on a particular vendor to do this function. And it will note on the transaction, will have like an old vendor and a new vendor, as you'll see as we progress. So when you click the merge, then you're going to see all the eligible vendors, and then you would select that and then merge that in there. So for this, so we have this one, merged vendors, And you're not seeing anything right now, then merge vendor, and then you can see that this one's eligible because we looked at it and we saw that it has the same type of EIN or SSN, and the SSNs are equal to each other. And then we select that one. Again, it's 2021 because that is the year of this test instance, our little demo instance. With us, it's going to be 2024. And then you're going to hit merge. And then it's going to say, are you really sure you want to merge this? And it says they're going to be merged, and the associated transactions will be linked to the primary vendor. You hit yes. And what it's going to do is it's going to give you a little report right up here.
I'm sorry, I couldn't understand.
This report.
Yes.
And here we go. Here's the ones. So your primary vendor is going to be vendor number 1. The merged vendor, which is merged into vendor number 1, has certain disbursements, invoices, POs, and requisitions that have been processed. And so it's showing your original vendor.
Okay. I'll be watching.
And then it's showing the one that's getting merged into. Also important to note is, here, so here's that report, sample of that. It's going to include that in your calendar year end files. So any vendors that are merged, this report right here will be in your calendar year end file of your file archive. So that will be there. I also like to save them all as well. If I've got an audit file, just to kind of, if I'm doing something like that, that I can put that in that audit file if I have that for my district files. So another item after you merge it, if you have something that is outstanding there, such as, let's find this. Okay, so that's good. That's merged in there, and then close that. So you can see here that this is, it didn't have anything there before. Now it has this as a vendor which has been merged. So we'll close that button out. And then, so there's nothing here, but if we go back and we look on, if we sort these, there you go, sort for that. If we look on the 7907, we can see on the merged info that it has been merged, the vendor it has been merged into, and the year that we did the merge. Now, this vendor that was merged into the first vendor has been marked inactive, and also the taxable total and the year-to-date taxable, or the year-to-date total, have been zeroed out and added into this vendor. So that was all added into that vendor. So that's how that works. And then if you have anything else that was, say it was in the payables, we can see that right here. That is now in vendor number 1. The original vendor was 7907. And so that is merged into that. And so if we look on the invoices, okay, both the vendors need to be active, I believe. That's in up here. Yeah, it has to be active. There you go. And then so if we're looking at this invoice, I believe this is the one. So it's going to show you the vendor, and it's going to show you the original vendor. So this is an AP invoice that hasn't been paid yet, but it's going to show you that link between those transactions so that the history is there. All right, so let's see, when the vendor is performed, it's going to affect the core vendor records of the primary vendor and the old vendor that was merged. And these are the updates, which we just talked about the calendar year amounts that are going to be added into the new primary vendor, and then that's subtracted out from the original vendor. And then it's going to uncheck when you do that, when you do the merge, it's going to uncheck the active box. And then you cannot change any of the information on that, such as the SSN and all that. All right. And then we had the example right here of the vendor. This one's a PO. We looked at an invoice. This is the new vendor, and this is the old vendor, and it's going to give you record of both of those on that PO, on the invoice, on a requisition, on the check, refunds, billings, and payments. It can also work for accounts receivable. We don't have that many districts that are on using that AR module, but it would work for that as well. Okay, and then in the file archive, after you merge that vendor, it's going to add that into your calendar year reports archive. Let me zoom into this a little bit. So that calendar year reports archive, it's going to have that in the specific calendar year, and then it's going to list their merged vendors and when you did those, and it could just print those out. I would not advise removing those. It has that ability, but I wouldn't do that. I always like to leave the information for audit purposes, and like I said, personally, I would save it also if I have a district audit file. I would also save that report that comes out into that audit file if you're keeping that. Okay, now you say, oops, I didn't mean to merge that vendor. There is an unmerge option as well. So you can go into that and then unmerge, and it's really quite that simple. So if we go into vendors and we're looking at Beard again, there we go. Right up here, we're going to look at our merged vendors. We're going to click the box, and then I just want to unmerge that vendor. Can you just print that? And then that is unmerged. And so now you can see those totals have changed right here. They're a bit higher before, and now they've gone back to their original 25. And then the other Beard. This one is active once again. And then those totals are now 150. Because remember, there was 175 when we merged them together, and it added those together. So there we go. And then that's the screen. And that is that. It shouldn't be terribly complicated. And in my next spot, we're going to kind of drill into how we can find these vendors that we need to merge. So going forward, we're going to work on the financial analysis using Excel and demonstrating some Excel skills. We're going to discuss pivot tables, freeze panes, data filter, visible cells only, number formatting, color coding cells and spreadsheet tabs, absolute and relative referencing in formulas, VLOOKUP and XLOOKUP, the sorting function, sums and subtotals. So I hope you empty out your brains because they're going to get filled up. Okay. So when you generate a report, there's several different options you can choose for the format. Most of the time we're doing a PDF report. You can also choose Excel data, and Excel data is the option that you're going to want to choose to work with it in Excel. There's also Excel field names, which you can also choose if you want to do an uploadable back into it. If you're downloading, looking at some data, and then maybe you're doing some things. We do this in payroll a lot, where we're adding some things or changing some things, and then we're uploading it back into that, into the software to make multiple changes at one time, doing a mass load. That would be the Excel field names. And then there's Excel, just Excel, and that's actually going to give you a PDF looking report in the Excel spreadsheet. So 9 out of 10 times, well, maybe not, maybe 8 out of 10 times, I'll use the Excel data if I'm not looking to update something and load it back in. So Excel data is what we're going to be talking about here. And here's our top 10 right there, kind of like David Letterman, but for Excel. The first thing we're going to hit, pivot tables. Pivot tables can be used to, you can summarize it or analyze it. You can use it for totals. You can use it for counts of things. And we're just going to revert back to what we were immediately talking about with the vendor merge. So we had, I just took a screenshot of what we were just talking about. For that, you can see our lacy beard right there. And then we're going to do that, doing a report of that data on. So if we went back here and we said, I'm just going to do a report of this. I'm going to do it in Excel data. And then you can actually change the name if you want. Vendor report to look for merge vendors. And then you generate that, and then through the, let's say the magic of television here, then we're going to have this vendor report. And so first trick of the trade, you can see that there's several columns that need to be adjusted. You can highlight the entire sheet with this, the little triangle facing downward, and then you just go in between the A and B columns, and you see where it's an arrow going both ways with a line in the middle, and you can just double click on that, and it will resize all of your columns at once. That's number one time saver right there. So it's just going to size it out to the length of the longest item in each data column. So if we go down here somewhere, there's quite a lot of entries here, but it will be, you'll find one that actually goes to the end of column B. It's actually that long. And of course in E, you can see non-employee compensation. It goes right to the end of that. So that's the number one trick of the trade here. If you wanted to do them individually, you just go in between B and C, and you can make that wider, you can make it narrower. You know, maybe you just want to bring that in or whatever. So, okay. So we've got that. And then we can do a pivot table for that. And so there's a insert pivot table that we can do, and it's going to give you a data range. You're going to want to select your data range. I always do a new spreadsheet. Some people add it onto an existing spreadsheet. I prefer just to have it, if I'm going to work with it, it's going to be in a different spreadsheet in my workbook. And then we're going to hit OK. And then you're going to select some fields. And this is the rows. And then you can do a count. You can do a sum. If there's like, maybe you've got accounts or something. You've got your accounts and you want to know how much was spent in each account. You know, maybe loaded down the data for the month. You can do that there. Instead of count, you would choose sum. Okay, right now we're looking for those merge vendors, and if there's merge vendors. So initially we tried, let's try it by the vendor name. That's like, okay, well, that would be okay, but you've got a Lacey Beard and a Lacey Ann Beard. That's only going to show up for one. I also have a Dallas Motor Services of 2. So for that, it's kind of like, maybe I should tweak what I'm looking at. And so I did the IDs instead, and there I saw I had 2. And so, okay, it looks like we've got 2 identical EINs or SSNs for 2 different vendors, and then you could look those up and do the vendor merge. So you've done your analysis like that. So we can just go back to here in this vendor, and I'm just going to select everything, hit that corner button, and then you're going to hit insert. Okay, it looks like you're sharing videos or animations. Do you want to include your computer audio while you're sharing? Are you able to hear me?
Yeah, we can hear you.
Okay, all right, that's what it seems like. As long as everybody can see the screen and hear my voice, then that should be included in the video and all that. So I've selected the top, right here, that top corner, and then I hit insert right there. There's the pivot table drop down right there. And then it's going to say from table range, and that's what I want to select. Okay, so there it is. It's showing it in what we call a green marquee, where it's kind of going around like an old time movie theater. And so it's got the range. It says I'm in the vendor report spreadsheet, and I'm using columns A through G right here. So it's going from A through G, and it's got all of it all the way down. It's going to put the pivot table in a new worksheet, and then we're just going to hit OK. All right. So you can see right here, this is the new worksheet. I'm just going to move it over here. I'm going to call it pivot table, just so it's easy. So I clicked out of that, and you saw the side disappear. You need to click in it to work with that. I'm just going to move that over a little bit. Okay. And so the way we did it was we used the ID number, clicking on that here. Now, if you wanted to do something, you can move it over here, move it over there. There's also a filter where if you've got something, like if you're working with a lot of data, sometimes there's a filter at the top, and that would appear above here. And then you could just filter and choose filter within the rows to choose certain things. All right, so I've got my IDs here. So these are the available IDs. And then I want account. You could even do, I think you can just do an account of IDs right here. So, all right. So there's blanks too. So, because it's test data. So we're going to ignore that top row, but we can see in here that there's 2 of these and 2 of those. So I've just, analyzed 8,147 vendors, and I found 2 that I want to do the merge vendor in. And granted, we talked through this, but if you're just doing it on the fly, it's much quicker and much easier than just say going to here and maybe like sorting up and sorting down, and then, because you're going to have an awful lot more than just a few SSNs here. So, and to go through and just kind of, oh, is this the same as that, or is that the same as that? It's so much easier to use your Excel for financial analysis for this. So that is the pivot table. There's lots of things you can use it for. All right. The next item on the list is the freeze panes. I always try and do like a little thing how you can remember this. I'm going to use my dog Buddy. It's kind of like if you're on the spreadsheet and you want to say sit, stay, and it's going to stay. And no matter where you go, you can go out there, go up and down the spreadsheet. It's not going to move. So it's like a good dog. It doesn't move. So for freeze panes, we'll go over to, let's see, let me make sure we clear that out there. I'm going to take some things off. See, that you move up and down the spreadsheet. Okay, let me bring it over here. All right. You move up and down the spreadsheet and your headers disappear. And that's really annoying. So it's like you can get down there, maybe you're doing a budget. You've got 4 different columns with amounts on it. What's my 3rd year? What's my 2nd year expenditures? What's last year's? It's like which column is which. So it's like that'd be great if I could have that all staying at the top. So, hang on just a second. All right. That corrects that. All right. So you would highlight this column, and then to highlight it, you just click on the actual number 1. So it's kind of like when we're in here and we want to highlight a row, and you highlight that row. But in here, we click on like any column in there, any amount, and it'll give you something there. In Excel, we click on the number of the spreadsheet, and then we want to go to View, Freeze Pane. And so there's a couple different choices. You can freeze the top row. You can freeze a column, or you can do a kind of a combination. So I'm just going to do, for the first one, I'm going to do freeze the top row. And then you'll see as I move down, I'm going to move down the top row up here. It's like sit and stay, just like that good dog Buddy. It's not moving. So to clear it out, you would go again to View, Freeze Panes, and then you hit Unfreeze Panes. Okay. And then when you move, it's not sitting and staying. Now, other items I've used this on when I'm working usually with like a payroll type thing, or maybe in budgets. I want that account, which is in that first column, I want that stationary, and I want my top header row to stay. So I would go in cell B2. So you want to go down 1 and to the right of 1 where you want it to sit and stay. So again, View, Freeze Panes, and then if I freeze panes here, not the top row, but here, and just freeze panes, and you can tell it's kind of got that in blue, which is going to get frozen. You hit that there. And then you can go down. It stays. If you had a lot of data, you're going over. You see that column over there is going to stay. And then you can see, even if we're down a few rows, the row number 1 is still there. So that's a good indicator that you've got frozen panes. So that is freeze panes. All right, and data filter is the next item. So you might be working with a spreadsheet and you want to kind of focus on certain things. So let's get our vendor again. So if we are here, and this has already got it done, but let me undo it. Yeah. So here, you know, you've got your items. You're going to highlight that item, that row, and you're going to go to, if you're on home, you're going to go over to data and filter, and then watch right next to the end of these columns. Hit filter, and then those downward arrows come into play. Those are drop downs. So you could go in there and say, different examples would be, I only want to see my active vendors. Active is true. That would be one thing you could use it for. And then notice when I did that, let's take this off again. The numbers on the side. Okay, so Don asked, where is the tax ID and ID number, right, Don? So this one, it's over here, but since it's test data, we only have a few in there.
But where do
So
we go in USAS to find those fields to export that?
Absolutely. Okay, let's go back. Okay, we're in the vendors. Okay, in the more button, hit the more button. Okay, and so I did a drop down on the 1099, and I selected the type 1099, the tax ID type, and the ID number. Okay, and then for the merged, there is a merge info up here.
Mm-hmm.
And if you're looking for your merged, then you would add these as well.
Okay.
And then you're going to find out who is merged, who it merged into, and a merged year. And that would be another great idea, to drop that down into your USAS and pull that down into report. And then you can find out who got merged and where they got merged into, if you've done it already.
So when
That's another good way to do it.
When I select the 1099, I don't see an option for tax ID. Is that a setting on the back end that we're not seeing? Like when I click 1099, I see type, but I do not see tax ID below to add that to the report.
It might be what your role is. If you have a certain role, you wouldn't see it, but if you're maybe a USAS manager, you would see that.
Okay.
So
Okay.
certain people, we don't want to see that because it's the PII, the personal identifiable information, and it's kind of, if you need to know it, then you get to see it type thing. So if you're a lower level role, then you won't be able to see that.
Okay, thank you.
Sure. So that's where you would select those to put on your grid. So you can see over here, I think I unchecked it so it wouldn't, that's the lacy beard. You can also hit the true. I think because I unmerged it, it's not going to show it. All right. So back here, we were into the filtering and the sorting. And so even here on this type of filter, a primary name, say you're looking for a type of vendor, and maybe we're looking for active vendors, which are true. So we filtered on one field, and notice after you filter, the numbers turn blue. I've worked on some pretty lengthy spreadsheets, and I've forgotten to unselect the filtered columns. And when I go back over here, that's a good little trick of the trade, is if your numbers are blue, you've got an active filter out there somewhere. And there's also a button up here to clear all filters. So here we go, back to where we were. Okay, so I want all active vendors, and then maybe I want to look for the ones that are supplies. So you can do a word filter in there. Unlike USAS, you don't have to put the percents in, and it will bring in everything. You don't click this add current selection of filters. You just leave it as it is, because it's going to select all the search results. Okay. And then everything here that comes up is a supplies vendor. So that's handy if you're looking for something. You know, I know it was, a certain type. I knew it had this in the name, but I can't quite find it. That's a good one for that. And then we're up to the next part on that. Filter, data filter. And the next part is visible cells only, which we're going to kind of build on what we've got. Okay, so the visible cells only, if we want to work with, we've got this whole group of data, but we only now want to work with our supplies vendors. So, and we're going to work with that in a different table. I just use the plus to create a new sheet. Okay, one. Click and drag over. You can see the little caret pointing down. Come on. There we go. And I'm just going to double click to change the name of the tab. Supplies vendors. Okay, so I've got my sheet all set up. Blank slate. And now I want to click that. Okay, that top one, it's gonna, because there's a lot of them. And then I want to go over, I want it to be on the home. And let's see, I think I have to, there we go. Sometimes when you have a narrower spreadsheet, it hides some of the features. So that might be something if you want to blow it up, using that square. Just blow that up to the full screen, or take it out a little wider, just so that you can see everything. And then the next spot is find and select. So we're on the home, find and select. And then we want to go to special. And then we want to select the visible cells only. And then hit OK. All right. So now you see there's it made some white lines in there. So it doesn't want these data in between the selected lines. It only wants the selection. And then you would want to copy right here. Now you can see this marquee going all in between each of these individual lines, like 360 and 361. Those rows are adjoining, so it's not going to be in between there, but around there. So it has all of those. So we've copied that. We're going to go to the supplies vendors, the blank worksheet. Going to go into the top left corner, and we're going to paste that. And so now all of these, and again, we're going to use our little trick, top corner, double click. Yeah. There we go. Okay. And then all of your supplies vendors only are listed. So if you wanted to work with those, maybe how many of those are close by in, say, Oxford or something like that. You know, whatever you need those for, you've got now your subset of data that you can work with. If you're working on budgets, maybe you have the entire budget here, and maybe you want to, and there I'm selecting everything again, or I can go out to data and clear my filters and get everything cleared up. Maybe I'm working on budgets and I've got some fields like the account number, and then maybe you've got the fund number, and I can narrow down for, maybe I only want to work with Fund 006 or the general fund, or if I'm in, you know, I'm working with the objects, I only want to work with salaries right now. So you could just take that subset of data and use the go to special, copy, and then paste it in its own little spreadsheet over here, and then just work with that data right there. So this is a great tool. Right there. It's visible cells only. All right, and here I go through the whole thing. You can't get the impression of the marquee and all that on the guide, but hopefully the demonstration helped with that. And also any kind of sub drop, you can't see that. I can't do a screenshot of that. And that's why the video is very helpful today. All right, number formatting. This is also good with budgets. A lot of times when things pull in, you'll get it where maybe your IL is 1 0 instead of 2 zeros, your job is 1 0 instead of 3 zeros, something like that. So you could go into your individual cells, and I've done it where I've clicked and highlighted the whole column, but I just did a demonstration of it with one cell here. So you click the one cell, you expand this corner of the number, and then that gives you the format cells box. Then you're on the number tab. You select the custom, and then under that, you will select this top 0 right under general. And then in type, you click in that box and you'd add the extra zeros that you would need for that type. It will give you a sample up here of what it will look like, and then you would hit OK. So we'll do a sample of that on the sheet. So here we go. We've got some ILs that are single zeros, and we're going to go into the number drop down. This little, it's a kind of a square with a arrow pointing down that will give you a larger selection. You're going to hit the custom. Then you're going to select the single zero, and I want this to customize it. I want to add an extra 0 for the IL. So I added, just keyed in an extra 0 there. It gives you a sample of what it's going to look like, and you hit OK. And see, now they are formatted. I'm going to do it again with the jobs. Hit that corner button. Custom. I'm going to hit the single 0. For this one, I'm going to need 2 zeros for the job. It gave me a sample right there. Yes, that's what I want. There, and then you can see, watch this spot right there. When I hit OK, it changes it to the 3 zeros. Okay. All right. And then if you're uploading something, you would save it as a CSV and immediately upload it into your budgeting, if that's what you're doing. Okay. Another item is the color coding cells and spreadsheet tabs. So this is helpful. I gave an example right here of the 100 level objects and the 200 level objects. So you can do things like that if you're wanting to kind of split things out. Here I did the one, you know, the 100 levels. and then I have some 200 levels down there. And one of the nice things, if you've got your data filter on, then you can click here in the object, and you can actually filter by the color right there. So now I'm only seeing that selection that is green in that field. Okay, we can do it again. Filter by color. I'll do purple ones this time. All right. So, my filters. Okay, so that's that. Absolute and relative referencing. Oh, wait a minute, let me go back. Go ahead and show you how to do that. Okay, maybe you want to do some more. Here we go. So to do that, it's on the home screen, and then it's the paint can where I'd make that purple. And you just select that. And then maybe I've got another one I want to make purple, and it'll hold it for your last setting. And so then you can just make that purple, and that's included in the selection there. You can also do different things where if you want maybe something, a different color for your text, also, it has standard colors down here, or there's other colors there. So maybe I just want that to be red. I'll give you a sample, you click on that. And again, it holds your last selection. If you want to go back to black, automatic is black. Okay. So if sometimes you want to maybe point out things that are a different value, that's good for text formatting, or maybe as we have here, we have our benefits in purple and our salaries in green. All right. Absolute and relative referencing. Formulas are great tools within Excel. Again, I've used a budget reference here, just kind of calculating. For this one, I did, like last year's expenditures and maybe think inflation rate, maybe 3%. I've added that in there. So when I did the calculation for this, I put equals M4 is M and 4, the fourth row here. So I'm referring to that with a blue cell, and it's kind of nice because it'll highlight it in blue, and the cell number will be in blue as well. And it'll do that. The more things that you add, it'll make them different colors. And then I'm multiplying it by 1 in parentheses, 1 plus, and this is referring, this S1 up here is this, I filled in the inflation rate. And so with the absolute, that is, it's going to have, as you can see, the number signs before it. That means it's kind of like one of those sit and stay things, like you're only going to refer to that cell. If I copy that cell down, if I copy the formula down, it's not going to move it. It's not going to move the reference down. It's going to be that cell at the top, and even if I move it down, it's only going to refer to this one cell. If I have like the M4, that doesn't have, that's a relative reference. If I copy that down with the M4, it's going to go to the next one. If I copy it down, it's going to be M5. Copy it down, it's going to be M6. So that, I mean, it's basically, I think I have that in, this is what I had it in. That is, I just did the example of what I have. So just calculating that out, that formula. So that's referring to that cell, and that is a relative reference cell. And then the inflation rate is constant. So if I move down here, this was M2, and I think for that one I did M4. Okay. Yeah, M2, and then it moved down to M4 because it just got copied down. It moved it down to, because I moved the formula down too. That one is M4, but it's still referring to that static, the absolute inflation rate up there. So, and this is nice with, again, if you're doing budgets and, you know, it's like I want to take what I had last year and add a inflationary rate. I can quickly arrive at what my budget you wanted that to be. There's lots of formulas, so if you have questions on formulas, please ask. And then we have VLOOKUP and XLOOKUP. So with VLOOKUP, you have, and I'm using actually a payroll reference here, because we use it a lot in the payroll, because a lot of things are referred to with the employee number. So a lot of times we will look up the employee number, and maybe we have one set of information, but I want to add in something else that I can get from this other data that's not on the original information. So you can run the two different reports, and then I can say, oh, I want to look up this employee number and get that information in here. So I can pull it in. So it's kind of, as I said, what you want to look up, which is the employee number, where you want to look for it. And so in this case, it would be a compensation. I had a position report, and I want to pull in that compensation from the number one position. So it's like, I want to look for it on the contract compensation. You want the column number in the range containing the value to return. Okay, so that is, if I'm looking in a certain array out of a box of information, say I've got A, B, C, D, E, F, G, okay, and then I'm counting the columns. A is 1, B is 2, C is 3. The column you want to look and pull that information from. So in this case, it would be, I want their compensation, their contract amount. And then the false is an approximate or an exact match. I almost always use exact match. So that's always going to be, that's what that false is. So, and then in VLOOKUP, you want to organize your data so that item that you're keying off of, that item like the employee number you're looking up, is in the, at least in the leftmost column of the items that you could look up. So like that's why it's in A here. So conversely, with XLOOKUP, you don't have to count columns, and that is good when you have lots of columns and you just, I don't want to count the columns. I just want to give, I'm looking up my employee number and I want to return a compensation from it. I'm looking up here and I want to return what's in there, and I don't want to have to count. So the other advantage to XLOOKUP is you can give a response which is not, if it can't find it in the VLOOKUP, it's going to give you the NA. And in XLOOKUP, you could actually put a value of something there. Like in the XLOOKUP, you can see I put no contract. So maybe this person left or whatever, and they don't have a contract this year, didn't find that person in the compensation report. And then it has, that's the if not found. And then the match mode is going to be approximate or match or exact, like we had in the VLOOKUP. 1 is true and 0 is false. And then the search mode is just, are we starting top to bottom or bottom to top? So we've got an example of that. There's the XLOOKUP. So we started with what we're looking for right here. where we're referring to, and that is just, notice this is only A. So we're only looking at this spreadsheet, column A. And then what's our return? That spreadsheet, column G, same spreadsheet. And then it has, what are we going to return if we don't find anything? It's going to return no contract. And then we have the 0 and the 1. So an example of that is this report here. And I think what I did, I was doing the sorting too in this. So with the sorting, I think I sorted it alphabetically. So with the sort, you're on the home page. And then I sorted it. You're using this A to Z. That's an easy way to do the sort. And I wanted to do a custom sort. It's originally sorted by their employee number. And you always want to make sure if you have data headers, you want to check this box right here. Otherwise, it will sort the data headers within the data. So if I want to sort by my last name and then the first name and sort those, there we go. Okay. And then for my example, if I did sorting and then I did my data filter. And so for this, I was looking for Alexander. I unclicked to clear everything out, and I only want to see the Alexanders. Okay, so there we go. And then our VLOOKUP, here is our example. It's looking at this A17 right here, and it wants to look in the contract compensation report, columns A through G, and it's going to count over 7. So it's going 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. And it went all the way down, goes all the way down to the end. And so it's looking at that group of data, and it's saying, I'm looking it up in here. And when I first find it in here, I'm going to go over 7 columns, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, and I'm going to return that number in the 7th column. And I want an exact match. That's the logic it's going through. So that's the VLOOKUP. For the XLOOKUP, it's saying, I'm going to look up my employee number, and I'm going to look it up in only column A. So it's saying, I'm going to go over here and look this up here. And when I find it, I'm going to go over the column G and give the correlating number for that same row. And I'm going to look at it, I think it was top down. I'm looking absolutely, and I'm looking top down. So if I find it, if there's 2 amounts, I'm going to give the first one. So, and then here you can see it didn't find anything for a VLOOKUP. It gave an NA. For the XLOOKUP, I said, if you don't find anything, I want you to say it's no contract. So that's the difference with the XLOOKUP and the VLOOKUP. And then also on here, I highlighted the position report, because this is the one I'm referring to, this guy. I'm referring to this guy, but my main report is this one. So what I did is I right-clicked, and I can do a tab color, and I can choose a different color. If I want green, I can make it green, purple. Purple's nice. There we go. And so you can highlight tabs that are important. This one thing I did was when I was doing the conversions, there were spreadsheets I was always referring to with data which I used in every conversion. And so those are the ones, I'd make them yellow or red or something like that. So it's, if you have like a root spreadsheet that Maybe it has formulas that you're always referring back to that spreadsheet. That's another good one to color code. Okay, we just discussed the sorting for that, where we sorted those by last name and first name instead of by employee number. Okay, there were the results. Okay, sums and subtotals. So if you quickly want sums, there's two different ways, and I've gone over this with a couple of people. We'll go back to this one again. If you've got a group of numbers and you quickly want a subtotal, you can actually highlight that whole column, and down here below, it will tell you the sum of that. And you can verify this is the exact same as this. So I did a sum here with a formula, and that came out to the same amount. So there's your sum. It'll tell you how many items are in there and the average. So if you want to quickly see a sum for something, you could filter it out and then just highlight the column. Okay, how much is in this? How much do all the Alexanders make? They make 91,000. It could have something else. How much do all the teachers make? You could do something like that. Also, you can do sums and subtotals. So in here, so with that, there's a sum button, like a sigma. And then just to note, if you have any blank rows, it's going to stop where the blank row is or where the NA row is. So you can see that right there. So we'll go back here. And so we'll do this guy. All right. Okay, that's on the home screen. And then your sum is here. And it's got a different group of functions. You can do sum, average. Most of the time we're doing sum. Okay. And it will show you what it's going to sum up. So it's actually going all the way down, but it's only seeing that. So it will just give you a total for what it sees on the screen. So if we would expand that out, we'll see where it gets us. Let's take it all the way down here. All right. We'll say if it pulled in maybe an extra 50,000. Then see that it included that because it actually included everything there. So it's pretty easy to do with the sums and the subtotals. You can also subtotal based on an outline. So that is under the data. So we talked about data filter. There's also a data outline with a subtotal. So this one I did at each change in object. I added a sum to my budget spreadsheet. I did it that way. And then that's what it turned out to be. It'll put in a little, for what you're subtotaling, it'll bold it, but it won't bold the subtotal amount. And I worked at this with a district last week, and I went through and we just quickly were able to bold those. So for that data, again, you have your outline. Okay, I'm going to ungroup. Okay. So then if you're grouping them, you would grouping our rows and all right, let's see if we can unclear it out. Let's clear it out. Okay. So in the outline, you would group it. I want to group my rows, and I want to do my subtotals. and I want to do at each change in a object, I want to do sum, and I want to do it on our budget amounts. So here's that. And then if you would hit number 2, which is, you can see where this minus sign is where it shows up, where that is. Then you can see that. And you can see these are bolded, but these aren't. So I went through and I clicked on each one. And then I just went over to the home and bolded those numbers. So they stick out a little better. But this is nice if you just want, oh, I want to see a group of, like, the summary all in one, and then just click on 3 if you want to see every little bit. So you can see, like, this is now bolded, which is the sum of those, 51,500. And then, so that these individual totals are bolded, which is nice. So that's that. All right. So that's it. We're a little bit over, but it was a lot of material. If you have any questions about how these work, or if you need assistance, I'll be glad to help you with your USAS or USPS reports in Excel. So I'm gonna go ahead and stop sharing. And all right, let's see. We talked about merging okay, they both have to be active. And we talked about how to add those different fields. Are there any other questions? Make sure to unmute yourself if you've got a question. All right, we'll go ahead and post this video as usual on our HCC website, which is, look at over on here on the HCC website under finance, and then click that first on the drop down and the HCC training recordings, and then we'll put it right under here under the HCC recording specific topics, and that will be linked to our YouTube, where you can view it if you need to see, especially where things like the marquees move and all that. That's helpful to see that. You can't get that on a guide, so that'll be there for you probably later today or tomorrow. All right, everyone, have a wonderful rest of your day. I'm glad you enjoyed it. Thanks so much.